Hello all, Rick here with a video breaking down every shield type from Star Trek. After all, we hear a lot of terms like covariant or metaphasic thrown around, but what makes them all different? So first off, we have two types of shield which are the most similar. Technically both are a form of deflector shields. There is the one emanating from the deflector array, and the defensive shields. The main shield grid is predominantly a network of force field emitters across a ship's hull that prevents physical particles and forms of energy from passing through. The shield emitters include the main deflector array, however, that defensive role is not the main property of said arrays. Instead, in starship design you often see these mild grid patterns at points across a hull, and these are the hull plates under which the defensive shield emitters are placed. They work by creating areas of intense particle disturbance, using both graviton particles and magnetism to guide matter into place. From there, the gravitons in particular cause a disturbance layer through which incoming fire or matter is diffracted or deflected. I've done a video in particular on how shields are described as working in Trek, so I'll link that in the description instead of going into it all again here. The deflector dish, or navigational shield, is a very toned down version of this grid, with a constant stream of gravitons combined with other particles and EM fields, rather than the focused points that the defensive shield grid forms. Nevertheless, shields can deflect most things from energetic particles to light, with even laser fire being easily bent away from a navigational deflector. These shields can deflect most slow-moving matter, a wide array of energized particles, like those from solar winds, and most importantly, most weapons fire, be it particle or energy based. The exact amount of damage they can sustain and protect against varies between vessel class, and contributing factors are power available, coverage, and intelligent usage of such resources. The Constitution class, for example, was very good at weathering single large blasts of energy, with the Enterprise once fending off 6 explosions that were reputedly 90 times as powerful as a photon torpedo. However, at other times, disruptor fire and other energies had a greater impact on the ship than this, so while some shield configurations provide ample defensive power, continual strain could drain them faster than single blasts, no matter how big. Tracked beams will also fail to find purchase on a shield, and transporter beams are also unable to pass through without being set to the same refresh frequency. Shield frequencies could be cycled as different energy or radiations could pass through certain frequencies, and a quick fix was to simply remodulate the shielding away from these vulnerable states. Standard shields do not protect against some natural phenomena like solar flares, heat, prolonged enormous physical pressure, gravitational effects, or certain energies like the Breen energy weapon or Polaron weapons fire. Although a fix for that last one eventually was added to standard shields. All shields regenerate with time when they fail, but regenerative shielding was developed in 2371 and termed that thanks to its incredibly rapid rate of recharge. Developed primarily for combat against sustained weapons fire, it was trialled alongside many other technologies on the USS Prometheus. Metaphasic shielding, which sounds similar to a later version we'll mention, is a very different take on protection. Alongside the standard way of creating localized distortion layers, metaphasic shields actually threw replicator technology into the mix. These were first seen in the alternate universe of the Kelvin timeline, but also mentioned in apocryphal manuals around the 2270s of the Prime timeline. Basically, these shields not only do the deflector-based system, but also instantaneously replicate a dubernium-osmium alloy in the way of incoming fire to take the hit. These layers are also transparent and usually vaporized or dereplicated after it intercepted blast, leaving behind a telltale trace of alloy molecules. While a pretty effective method, ultimately it was likely phased out of use because it offered little improvement over the evolving standard deflector shields. Multispectrum shielding was the precursor to metaphasic shielding, and was to protect against a wider array of radiations and strange phenomena. It is possible that this is the same shield type as multiphasic, and multiphasic shielding was a shield type that existed in numerous phases at once, meaning that it also intercepted many subspace phenomena that were unhampered by shield systems in regular spacetime. It began development in the 2290s, and because of the added subspace protection, it could also act as a scattering field against most communications, transporters, and other subspace systems. By the late 24th century, it was common on science ships, and by 2401, the Sagan class launched with such a shield system as standard. Multi-adaptive shielding was created by the Hansons in 2347 as a form of stealth technology that saw limited success. It was basically a system that focused on adapting to scanning frequencies and scattering them, preventing detection, and was only ever calibrated for the Borg. However, in the end, this technology was assimilated by the Collective, so even that specialised application was rendered ineffective as they learned of it and countered it. It's likely that any shield system could be configured to run this multi-adaptive program with knowledge of the sensor system they were trying to evade. However, the implementation and required observation beforehand makes it impractical on anything except extended surveys. Another version of such stealth shielding was the refractive shielding of the Devore Imperium, which likely is a different system and tech behind it, but the effect was the same, a scattering field to obfuscate scans, even those as sensitive as Voyager's. Chromodynamic shielding was a form of low-power, non-intrusive radiation shielding commonly used on planet-side installations to protect inhabitants from harmful or potentially dangerous radiations. It did not stop weapons fire, nor slow-moving matter, and we saw its use on the Starfleet Hyde of the Baku planet in 2375, where it prevented the metaphasic radiation from affecting the observation teams there. Unimatrix shielding was a form of incredibly advanced shield developed by Tuvok after his analysis of various shield systems encountered in the Delta Quadrant. Initially tested on a new probe, then the Delta Flyer, this system was very well adapted for surviving hazardous environments. The name suggests a connection to Borg technology, which is likely, and therefore likely involves numerous adaptations both software and hardware based. The Unimatrix shielding on the Delta Flyer not only withstood its trial mission into a gas giant's immense pressure, but it also took several shots from a Borg tactical cube to destroy the tiny vessel. Massively successful, but it seems to be something that needs to be planned into a ship's design, as Voyager itself was never refit with it. Covariant shielding was encountered by Voyager in 2376 as part of Penk's broadcast ship. It was far more powerful than regular shielding, had a distinctive green hue to it, but had a slower recharge rate. The term comes from the fact that there are several differently alternating shield frequencies that operate in tandem to produce the overall shield grid. It is far more focused on deflecting weapons fire than other hazards, so for this reason, Starfleet opts to seldom use it. Immersion shielding is one of the more specialised on this list. Its role was specifically to maintain viewer belief in the fictional world. No, it was a form of energy shielding that hugged a ship's profile tightly and prevented fluid matter from making contact. This means it was there to provide underwater shielding around vessels or installations, and the only time we see this is on the Delta Flyer, as it was originally designed to handle the liquid methane and hydrogen layers of a gas giant, as well as the aquatic depths of the Monian waters. Paratrinic shields are a mostly unknown shield system, as it was encountered in 2376 by Voyager around a sentient warhead. Its benefits or drawbacks were mostly untested. Metaphasic shielding is one of the more commonly heard shield systems. Metaphasic shielding was developed from the research of Dr. Rager, a Ferengi scientist, in 2369. The primary use was to protect from heat, pressure, and radiation within the corona of a star, being the perfect test environment. This was to allow probes and even ships to survive closer examination of stars and such phenomena, while the many other radiation types were also caught in the protection. While not as defensive as regular shields, this made them an excellent choice for scientific vessels, and probably why Starfleet was all over that, folding in the tech to existing vessels before adding it as standard by the launch of the Constitution Mark III in 2401. These worked by adding a subspace compression layer to the shield, expanding the number of hazards they could protect against, but weakening performance against heavy firepower. The Trinar shield system was a form of planetary shield expanded into a system-wide bubble. Planetary shielding, I guess, deserves a mention on this list, however it merely refers to the scale of shield in question, as the technology actually in play is more often than not simply a scaled-up version of an existing tech. The Trinar shield was developed by the Binar, and resistant to most weapons fire, although sufficient physical impact was enough to breach it. The benefit of this grid was that it could retain its defensiveness over such a large area, and was seen in 2381. Temporal shielding is one of my favourites on this list, and an incredibly useful one. It's not clear when this was developed, but it was definitely in operation within the Department of Temporal Investigations by the early 2300s. Temporal shielding does nothing to protect against physical or energy-based effects, but does basically ensure that the encased area remains anchored in its current timeline. A very specialised system, a temporally shielded area will remain unaffected by changes to the timeline, which is vital for the temporal agents of any government to maintain oversight. After all, how can you tell if things are different unless you have a basis to compare them to? For this reason, at least, the DTI held on to a shielded database to compare the timeline to find discrepancies. Likewise, ships with time travel missions appointed to them, like the Infinity, Protostar, Relativity, naturally had temporal shields, and the USS Voyager was able to implement temporal shields in 2374, despite the Intrepid class not originally having such shielding. It seems that by the 25th century, temporal shields are not uncommon, and give it another 100 years and you get into the Temporal Wars and the Battle of Procyon V, so I'd say that by then it's safe to assume temporal shielding was common. So there we have it, all the shield systems we encounter. Well, there might be one or two others mentioned here and there, but these have very little to go on besides the name. There are, of course, a myriad of shield techniques and modifications that you can make to standard systems for various effects, like feedback pulses and so forth, but these all come under the bracket of the regular shield system, with the only variability being the ship in question's ability to modify its own shields. Science vessels and exploration craft by default tend to have the most adaptive systems, as they're the most likely to encounter a variety of unknown phenomena, so they need the widest net. So too do they receive systems like temporal shields, multiphasic shielding, and so on. Covariant shield arrays might be more handy on combat craft, but even then the Federation tends to shy away from them in favour of adaptability. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the different shield systems of Star Trek. I've been Rick, and until the next one, thanks again, and goodbye.